It's never always going to be going great. But for me, when things are going great, I get nervous because that for me in my life, when things seem to be going great, that's when I get hit the hardest. And I've been hit so hard so many times that most people would have complete nervous breakdowns. Most people would totally just give up. And most people in this world do in fact give up. But there's something in me. I don't know if it's a kid from the projects or whatever, whoever taught me whatever it is I have. I just can't give up. I want to be honest with you. There's times you just want to give up, but I don't really have any options, right? I'm just not going to give up. I'm not going to end it. I'm not going to be one of those people. So I just, dust myself off and realize that if I just keep pushing, that I'll get there. And I try not to make the same mistakes that I've made before.
Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. Today, we're with Mr. Mike Alden, another fellow friend, Bostonian. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man? I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we figured it out, didn't we?
Hey, you were not under a time crunch at all. You had 3 minutes to get your as we say in Boston, your stuff together, but we actually say worse than that. But I'll keep it clean today, man. But it's good to see you here.
That's not Boston.
No, we don't say stuff. and we got our friend Dr. Finance in the house as well on Clubhouse. So yeah, man, good stuff. But listen, I'm happy to get you here. I know we've talked about this a couple times, and yeah, we're gonna have a conversation today about authenticity. I think that's a cool topic, huh?
I like it. I mean, I think on Clubhouse, you either are or you aren't. And I think the kind of the savvy people can really tell the difference,
Okay, let me see. We had a little tech issue myself over here on Clubhouse. Let me plug it in now. So now
they hear you, they don't hear Mike.
There we go. Now we're actually on Clubhouse. All right, good. See, there we go. We're both having tech issues today, Mike. It's all good. It's like
making it happen, brother. Just making it happen.
Just gonna keep moving forward.
There he goes. I hear those Boston accents now.
There we go. Yeah. Well, thanks for setting us up, Dr. Finance.
You connected us. This Philly accent. Who is this guy?
You're welcome.
Yeah, Philly. I
didn't even know you guys were having a podcast. I just walked in, got a little ping. I'm like, wow, perfect timing.
Me neither. I didn't either.
Yeah, me neither. We all just showed up here on out of the blue.
Funny.
All right. Well, listen. Who's Mike Alden anyway? Mike Alden, ESQ. Is a CEO, Esquire. What is Esquire? Correct?
Esquire,
is that
man. I mean, technically,
you're an attorney. I didn't know you. Were you an attorney? I didn't know you were an attorney.
I am.
Okay.
I went to Suffolk, man.
You went to Suffolk. All right, good stuff, man. That's good. I for whatever reason I did not know that. So now I know, right? CEO, entrepreneur, 3-time Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestselling author. He was named the Boston Business Journal as one of Boston's 40 under 40 and was the winner of SmartCEOs Future 50 awards, largely based on his accomplishment of growing a small call center into a comprehensive multi-million-dollar marketing firm ranked by Inc. magazine for 3 years as a man. I am just horrible sometimes with these. You have a long bio, bro. This is your fault. This is your fault, man.
Okay, you got a lot of stuff.
I love it. Yeah. So, magazine for 3 years in a row as one of the nation's 5,000 fastest growing companies. Let's see. He has been seen by millions worldwide as a host of numerous long-form advertisements, which feature dozens of successful products. He is a regular guest on a national and local podcast, as well as Path to Mastery Today and television shows, and also host of the podcast, The Alden Report, which he features internationally recognized leaders in the business world. His internationally best-selling books are Ask More, Get More, 5% More, and Blueprint to Business. He holds a Juris Doctorate from Suffolk University and a Bachelors in Science, in Political Science from Springfield College. Man, Mike, you've done a lot of stuff, brother. Appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. I mean, I don't have my PhD like Dr. Finance, but,
well,
they say, the JD, and I mean, I technically, again, I have my doctorate in law, right? So I could say that if I really want.
Well, none of us have what Dr. Finance has, so we just gotta live with what we have, man.
Mike, who are you kidding me,
gonna
Mike?
be
If you're a
okay.
JD, you're still a doctor.
Juris Doctorate, yeah. I mean,
You're
you know,
Dr.
like, how many
Mike, man.
lawyers, like, very rarely. I mean, I had a lawyer friend of mine who said, you know, when I try to book a table at a restaurant, I just tell them that I'm a doctor, you know. So technically, though, I think you have to get your LLM, which is the next degree in the law. Well, I don't who knows, but
I don't know. Let's just talk about authenticity anyway. We're getting way off track here, man. This is Dr. Finance. You're messing us up, bro.
Oh, sorry.
I started it.
All right. So listen. So let's break this down first off, and I do want to get into your books as well.
David, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
You still can't hear Michael too clear. It's really low. When is that? Maybe you can open up the clubhouse.
Hold on. Let me try this. No, we can't do that, or we're gonna have serious feedback. Is that better?
Talk again, Mike.
Better? Is it better?
Yeah, a little better.
better. All right, good.
How do you say yard?
How about now? Is it better?
Yeah, a little better. Yeah.
All right, good. Just have to speak loud, Mike. Mike had a mic earlier. Mike had a mic that was
I had a mic issue.
A lot of static
I have
going on.
4 microphones hooked up right now, so I don't know which one's working.
That's all right. You know what? If this episode absolutely sucks because of the quality, we'll just do it again. That's all. It's no big deal. But I think we'll be fine, bro. I think we'll be fine. But let's talk about authenticity first off, and then I do want to talk. Well, you know what? First, let's talk about your books. You got 4 books. Ask more, get more, 5% more. What more? What, bro? What are we getting more of?
Well, I'll tell you. So the first one, Ask More, Get More, was, the one that really kind of put me on the map as an author. And the title, kind of speaks for itself, right? There's a lot of books that you can look at or you could buy, and you take them. And a lot of times they just put them on the bookshelf, or they leave them on the dining room table, or leave them in the bathroom. They don't read them. And, if you don't read these books, then everyone knows if you don't apply the concepts in the books, then it's really kind of worthless, right? It's a waste of, your hard-earned dollars. But if you look at the title of Ask More, Get More, right? A lot of people just get it right away. They're like, oh, okay, so I need to ask for more in order to get more, right? And for me, as you and I both grew up in, kind of tough backgrounds. And so as a young kid, I realized that, one, we're taught that asking, right, especially again, kind of even the way we grew up, is gluttonous. It's not proper. It's actually, sometimes it's even rude, because we didn't understand. I didn't necessarily understand what it meant to ask, right? But if we don't ask, right? I mean, there's a bunch of books that have come out since my book and even before with the title "Ask" in it. I wasn't the first one to write a book with the title with the word "ask" in it. But if we don't learn to ask properly, right? Even the tough questions that we don't know, that we don't want the answers to, then we're ultimately not going to just get more. And so I tell people, look, you need to ask more questions out of yourself. You need to ask more questions out of others. And then ultimately, you need to ask more questions out of life. And a lot of times, man, the questions that you're asking, you probably don't want to hear the answer because it's really, really difficult. But unfortunately, in order to grow, and I'm just talking about my own personal experiences. So if I didn't ask these questions, that again, I think because as lawyers, we're trained not to ask questions unless we already know the answer. And so when I'm asking these questions, I pretty much know the answer, and I don't even want to hear it. But I know that in order for me to grow, I have to ask those questions. And that's really kind of the essence of Ask More, Get More. It's ultimately, again, it's teaching people how to ask the right questions at the right times in order to get more out of life.
Interesting. So I do want to actually, I want to stay there for a minute, because what I'm actually thinking the exact opposite of what you said. For me, when I'm asking questions, I really try to ask questions that I don't know the answer to, so I can, because I really want to focus on being curious, like curiosity. So when I asked you what more was, I really had no idea what the answer was, and you said it was questions. So explain why you try to ask, why you would say ask questions that you know the answer to, or why are attorneys supposed to ask questions? Well, I guess from an attorney perspective, because they're trying to build a case, that does make sense. But in the real world, if you're trying to help somebody, if you're trying to move somebody, wouldn't you ask questions to help them self-discover?
Yeah, it's a really great point, and and you're probably one of the first people that's ever even brought this up. Okay, so as a podcast host, as a peak performance coach like you, right? you do need to ask questions that you probably don't know the answers to, so that you can learn more about the person that you're trying to help, right? Or as a podcast host, I do the same exact thing. I don't have my lawyer hat on when I'm a podcast host. I listen to what the guest is talking about, and I could just tell that maybe it's the Boston thing, Mass thing, I don't know, but I could just tell we have a similar style where, you might know a little bit about me and you have some basic background, but you don't want to almost know everything, because it becomes more of an authentic conversation and an interesting conversation for the people that are listening. And someone like you, again, who's, again, you're a peak performance coach, you make people better. You do need to kind of dive deep, and you probably don't know everything about these people, but you do need to know those answers. So what I say, as a lawyer, when you're building cases, if you've ever been in a deposition and they're asking questions, it's not like they just thought these things up on the fly. They knew exactly where they're going. Like you said, they're building their case. But again, as someone who is trying to be curious and learning about someone else's life, sure, you're going to ask the questions that you don't know the answers to. But again, as a lawyer, not advisable.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, because you're going to get caught off guard, and that's not going to be good. That makes sense. All right, let's jump into authenticity, man. Tell us why. Well, first off, I'll just throw it to you. Like when we talked about doing this episode, and I asked the question, what value would you bring to my audience? You had said authenticity, a word that most people overuse. And when I saw that, I loved it. I said, I definitely want to talk about this. So why did you choose that?
I tell you, Clubhouse, where we met in Dr. Finance, again, he's just been a great friend and a great connector. And for me, it'll be 2 years, I think, in December. It's really helped me to become even more authentic on who I am, right? Because, as you mentioned some of the accolades, and a lot of people are on this, on Clubhouse, who do flex and they talk about big things, and they, 7 figures, 8 figures. If you really look at the stuff that I've done, it's 11 figures. Okay. We've generated hundreds of millions of dollars, and that sounds cool, man. Right. But, and a lot of people might just leave it there. I don't. I tell you that I don't have that money really anymore. I mean, technically I'm a millionaire still, but I've lost millions, and I've been beat up more so than you can possibly imagine. I've had bank accounts frozen. I've had people embezzle money from me. And we were just talking about this earlier, and I said this on Dr. Finance's house. I mean, I built a massive house in the town that I grew up in which the town that, and where I was in the projects where, my mom, we were on Section 8 housing and WIC, and the Salvation Army, had to subsidize our Christmases and Thanksgivings and things like that. I'll tell that story, right? Because it's a part of the origin story, which seems, kind of like a good story. But when you're going through that stuff right now, no one really likes to talk about it. So again, in Dr. Finance's club with Tim's story there, I told the story in front of, a couple hundred people about how I built this massive house. It was like a big trophy and a big exclamation point. This kid that grew up in the projects, this kid that should have been dead by the time he was 17, because that's what everybody told me. And now I'm living in a private neighborhood, in a very wealthy town, by the way, Beverly, Massachusetts, and I had to sell that house. Now, could I have not sold it? Probably. I could have figured it out. But at the same time, if I was going to sell that house, I was going to sell it at the top of the market. And I did. And it didn't feel good, man. And it hurt. And my wife was certainly not happy about it. Nobody was really happy, but it's a very negative place to be in. I'm not afraid to talk about that stuff, though. A lot of people don't want to tell you that stuff because why? Because they feel like they failed, or they feel like they're a failure, or they feel that people are going to look down on them, or people are going to talk behind their backs, and they probably will. But I'm at this point in my life where I've seen the highest of highs, and I've seen the lowest of lows, and I don't know exactly where I am right now as I'm talking to you today, but I do know that for me as a human being, to be authentic with myself first and then with others, I think the value there is really, you can't put a price on it, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. And, honestly, a lot of people, I think people will relate more anyway when people get up there and they talk about how great they are and all the money they have and all the stuff they do. Most people are just like, who cares? Like, good for you, right? But when you share a story like you just shared, then you're relatable. I mean, would you agree with that? I think that's what people actually want to hear, and that's what people connect with.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, but people do, like, especially in this, TikTok world, Instagram world that we're
Well,
in
that's
now.
it.
And
Social media.
yeah, people love to see the bling, and I don't know, it triggers something in our brains that just excites us. And, and we want that stuff, and we want to be there. We want to be that person. And, I found myself early on when I started making real money, doing that shit, posting stuff that watches and cars and houses and traveling and just staying at the nicest hotels. I told stories before, like when we would go to Vegas, for a convention or a trade show. I was staying in probably one of the nicest, I wouldn't say the nicest room at the Wynn, because that's where we would stay. But you're talking $4,000 a night sometimes for some of these rooms, and we stay there for a week, and that's just me, and I'd bring 20 people with me. We go to Vegas and spend $200,000. That's cool, man. I'm a baller, right? Look at me. I'm proud of myself, But guess what? I left with nothing. Maybe I did a deal or what have you. But what did that prove? Did it make me happier? Definitely not. Did it make me feel cool while I was there? Yeah, probably. But then what I noticed, David, when I'm talking specifically about my industry and the industry of direct response, I did something really different this time. One time when I went, I did stay at the Wynn. And you go there and everybody's rocking the Rolexes and the Robert Grahams and the really expensive jeans and the nice shoes and all that. Everybody goes out and they're wearing, just on their body, they have, some of them hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Just of stuff. This time, though, a couple of years ago, I wanted to do something completely different. I just was staying in the Wynn Towers, right? Super expensive, super swanky. But I decided I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I'm not going to rock the Rolexes and show everybody like how cool I am. I'm just going to wear shorts and a t-shirt. I went to industry events where everybody and I have a picture, I think, with me and Forbes Riley, and Forbes could tell you this. I'm wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops, right? And everybody's looking at me like, who is this guy? There are people that didn't know me, but then I was doing the complete opposite of what everybody would do, and it drew more attention to me, and I actually generated more business. So when I realized none of this stuff matters, right? None of this, not the watches, the cars, none of this stuff matters because it's truly not authentic. So when I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be me. And you know who I am? I'm a guy that's going to wear a t-shirt and shorts and basketball shorts. And, it's probably not, I don't know. I mean, some people might not have liked it when I showed up to some industry trade show, dressed like that, but it just worked. So, for me, again, it's about just being me. And I think a lot of people have trouble being themselves.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you can afford it, if you can afford Rolexes and if, like, I know a couple guys that work for Grant that drive Bentleys and things like that. They can afford it. Right. So why not? Right. I think the challenge is the people that can't, that, they don't have any money, but they do go buy a $100,000 car and wear a Rolex, but they live in an apartment. They're, there's a lot of, and then there's also the fake stuff, right? Like with all the Gucci bags and all the other things that are not even real bags. And it's, I don't know, it's just interesting. I think you nailed it with social media. I think a lot of it is everybody is so just concerned with what everybody else is doing and how people, this was one of my takeaways, like how people perceive me. Like I was worried about, even when I first came on Clubhouse, like, oh, what if I say something and someone, then I finally just says, who gives a crap what anybody else thinks? I'm just going to be myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I started being myself, that's when, I started having fun. I started getting more followers. I started getting invited into more places and there's places that I do and places that I don't go, But let me toss it back to you though. Something you said in the beginning, you said be even more authentic. And then I'm going to open it up. We've got some people on the stage. So I want to give some of these guys an opportunity to ask some questions. Dr. Finance is here. Justin's here. Dave Morrell. We got some really cool people.
I didn't know we were going on Clubhouse too. This is exciting.
Yeah. So when you say be even more, how do you be more authentic?
Sure. Yeah. So I show my absolute losses. I show the worst things that have happened to me. And I was just talking about this a couple of days ago, years ago when I had bank accounts frozen, merchant accounts shut down, losing millions of dollars in a single day. I didn't talk about that because, quite frankly, you just want to jump off a bridge. You can't even imagine what it's like when you wake up in the morning and all of your shit's frozen. And I've had that happen to me before. and I didn't want to talk about it, right? Because people go right to the point where, well, if that happened to him, then he probably was doing something wrong, right? And I'm a lawyer, right? And so when I say be even more authentic, I share with people really the dark stuff, the stuff that happens to average, everyday, normal people every single day. Whereas when you've got these guys that are sitting way at the top now, and they're doing whatever it is they're doing, they may talk about it in the periphery. They'll say, "Oh, well, this happened to me," but they don't talk about really what it felt like, what it really, the pain that they felt, and the trauma and the chaos that it creates. But what I've also realized, and I think we're right around the same age, what I've realized, and in my 47 years of being here, that for me as a person, it's just easier to handle. I'm talking about this again in Dr. Finance's room, because I've been through so much trauma and pain, literally, by the way, from the womb. I mean, I was in the ICU for the first 6 months of my life, having seizures on the left side of my body. The doctor said I wasn't going to make it, that I was probably brain damaged, right? From the womb to now. And I've had constant pain and trauma. But then I started to think about it. I was like, I remember talking to my mother one day. I'm like, "Mom, why does it always have to be so hard? Why does it have to be difficult? I know Les Brown. I know that Les Brown has been in Dr. Finance's room. I had Les Brown on my podcast. I asked him that question. I said, Les, why does it always have to be so painful?" And he told me this big long story. I won't get into the whole story, but he ultimately said it's the struggle that creates life. And once I realized that, and once I can talk about that, and I truly, here's the thing, I don't care about what people think about me. I really don't. If I see something, the human in me, because I'm being honest, I'm not going to like it. And people say, "Oh, why?" I'm not going to like it. I don't care what you think about me, but here's what I do care about. I do care about my reputation. And so if I'm authentic, if I tell you the worst things that have happened to me, I've talked about them in all my books, had owed money in taxes, the IRS coming after me, all that stuff that nobody wants to talk about. It does a bunch of different things, including disarming people, right? And so if I'm brutally honest, then I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah. I think it also gives people hope. Like, people realize, like, hey, I can, because there are people right now that are in some of those situations and they may be hopeless, right? But yet you were in that situation. You were able to work your way out of it, right? You were able to work your way back. Like you said, you're in a moment when you didn't know what to do, right? They froze your accounts. You're there. You're like, how do you work? Like, what's going on in that moment in your mind? How do you keep moving forward?
Yeah. Again, and just to be honest with people, when stuff happens like that, I've met people that, you talk to them, you look them in the eyes, and you can just tell they're probably a clinical sociopath. I'm not joking. And so, if you look at somebody in the public eye, like Donald Trump is definitely a sociopath. And listen,
but that guy's gone through so much. It's insane that he still keeps going.
Right. But he also, when I say sociopath, we all have those tendencies, and it's good to have some of that stuff. Narcissism is actually kind of good. To have the sociopathic tendencies is kind of good, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But if you're the type of person that, like Trump, and again, I don't know him personally, whatever, but just from what I see, he actually really doesn't really necessarily care about the people around him. And so when you think about people like that, that's a real problem. But I think about, like who I am and what I'm doing in my life and how I impact other people. So, I when I'm thinking about how I'm living my life, I just feel like, to be truly honest and candid and open with people, it's cathartic. It's almost like therapy, right? I talk about therapy. My first book, 2014, I was talking about how I had a panic attack to the point where I thought I had to go to the hospital. Like, who says that stuff?
Hey, David, this is Deborah.
By the way, I've had used against me too, just so you know.
Hey, Deborah, we'll get to some questions in a couple minutes. All right. Thanks for jumping in. So Mike, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a minute there. All right, you know what, Deborah, what do you got? Let's just go to Deborah.
Well, I don't agree. I think Trump revolutionized America in his speeches. He brought everybody together, lifted us up, and really cared about America. So I think, I'm sorry, but I think you're totally wrong about him.
Okay.
And his voters proved it.
Yeah. So we appreciate that thought and
Hey,
opinion.
let me just respond to that real quick, right? So,
Right.
okay, I was just using him as an example, and I also if you did say, if you heard what I said I don't know him, I don't necessarily know everything about him. I did say that. I was just using him more as an example, not as a political statement or about whether or not you like him or don't like him or what he did, but the type of people, because I've worked with the type of people. And by the way, we did come really close to doing it the old Donald Trump, and I could show you the agreement because I drafted the agreement, right, with Trump University. So what I'm saying is there are people that are in fact sociopaths that don't care about the pain and the trauma and the chaos that they create for other people. That's all I was saying.
But see, that's not true at all. I am sorry.
What's not true about the definition of a sociopath?
Totally disagree with you.
You're telling me that I'm wrong about the definition of a sociopath?
Well, I'm telling you wrong about using him as an example.
Okay.
Oh my God, his speeches bring so many people together and lift people up. It's just totally wrong to say that about him.
So I want to keep this focused on the topic. So I do appreciate the commentary. So thank you for that. I'm actually going to leave it in there too. I think it's worth leaving into the episode.
And guys,
so
this is why I don't talk politics.
Yeah, amen. I'm gonna stay away from it myself. I've got some thoughts on the whole thing, but I want to get back to the authenticity, though, the topic. As a matter of fact, I think there's a perfect opportunity to kind of toss it to you, Dr. Finance. Do you have a question for Mike? Either you or do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, I guess. I always have plenty of questions.
This is the challenge with doing a podcast on Clubhouse.
Yeah. David, I hats off to you. I would never do this format, but I like it.
It's good stuff, man. It's real. This is authentic, right? Like, this is real deal. I mean, I don't know that you could have got more authentic than what just happened.
It's definitely different, and I think I like it.
Yeah, I do too, actually. So thank you.
This is super cool. By the way, thank you, David, for inviting me to this. It was a last minute thing. I literally just saw I was on stage somehow, and I'm like, oh, it's in David's room. Awesome. Cool. So, but this is an awesome.
This
David
would never fly in Dr. Finance's room. I'll tell you that.
By the way, folks, don't forget to share this on Clubhouse if you can. Hit that little box and share it. I only got one share here, David, and it's for myself.
Sorry, I'm not worried about shares right now, brother. Do you have a question from Mike?
Oh yeah. So, Mike, question for you, Mike. In Friday's room with Tim Story, the topic was about how to convert setbacks to comebacks, and that was Tim's expertise of many years. Tim's Story, mentor to celebrities, David Hill's connection and mentor.
Yep.
You had a brilliant response to that, Michael. I would love for them to hear a 1 to 2 minute summary of what you said, because you were speaking very to the heart, and that's a message of basically your whole story. So setbacks to comebacks. How do you feel about setbacks, comebacks? What impact has it had on your life?
Yeah, I mean, when I basically told the story about, kind of how I grew up and when I got to almost the kind of the pinnacle of success, and this, I mentioned it earlier, the building, this custom house in the private neighborhood in the town I grew up in, and what a statement that was, because like I said earlier, everyone pretty much thought I would be dead or in jail, and you didn't even belong there. And it's funny too, actually, this neighborhood that I'm talking about, David, too, you appreciate it. I think you're a hip hop guy, right? So like I'm coming in there, in a fairly expensive car, but I'm bumping Ice Cube with a hat on backwards, and my neighbors are doctors and dentists, and they thought I was just like definitely a fish out of water, because but what I was saying was, in your room, Dr. Finance, is that the adversity that we go through, when you're going through it, I don't care what anybody says, and this goes back to the sociopathic and narcissistic behavior. When you're going through that stuff, it doesn't feel good. And you certainly don't want to go through it. I've had people tell me that they like to put themselves in peril, which I think is an insane thing to do. But when you go through that, because we all go through adversity, we all have all different versions of it. If you can truly make it through the other side and understand that you will get through, then it does make you stronger. I mean, look, it's the classic cliche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's a real thing. But I'll just say this, if you can avoid it, do your best, because I avoid it as best I can. I try to prepare my life, And that's why I get frustrated sometimes when I'm talking to people, because I'm like, man, I feel like I'm doing everything right. And if you remember, I actually asked Tim's story. He said, hey, Tim, what happens when everything seems to be going great? What are you supposed to do? And his response was, well, what I would do if I'm you is I would look and try to help other people, because it's never always going to be going great. But for me, when things are going great, I get nervous, because that, for me in my life, when things seem to be going great, that's when I get hit the hardest. And I've been hit so hard so many times that most people would have complete nervous breakdowns. Most people would totally just give up. And most people in this world do, in fact, give up. But there's something in me. I don't know if it's a kid from the projects or whatever, whoever taught me whatever it is I have. I just can't give up. I want to be honest with you. There's times you just want to give up, but I don't really have any options, right? I'm just not going to give up. I'm not going to end it. I'm not going to be one of those people. So I just, dust myself off and realize that if I just keep pushing, that I'll get there. And I try not to make the same mistakes that I've made before.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Finance. Yeah, great answer. And it's unfortunately, I was at a retreat last Friday, so I missed all of it. But you know what? I'm excited to learn a little bit about what happened.
Weren't you the one that made that happen too, right? Didn't you?
Tim and I, we talk every other month, so he coaches me. But yeah, I was part of it, but it just happened to fall on the night of my retreat with the men's ministry, so I just had made it work. That's all. But good news is I talked to Tim anyway next week, so it's all good. Well, listen, let me ask you this then. I mean, with regards to what we're talking about right now and everything else, what would you say to some of the people listening to this right now that maybe are struggling with themselves being authentic? Like, because on Clubhouse everybody's a multimillionaire, and then there's the billionaires, right? But in reality, is most people aren't, and you have no idea. I mean, I think you can listen. Sometimes you can hear, but sometimes the people are really, really good. I mean, there's some people on here that they sound like their shit's together, but in reality, it's not. So what do you say to those people? Like when it comes to, because is it hard to be authentic? Because everybody puts their best stuff. I know this is a kind of a long rolling question, but everybody puts their best stuff on social media, right? And then nobody's really showing the like what you talked about today, right? That takes a lot of courage, but everybody's putting so what would you say to people that are kind of struggling with what you're saying?
Yeah, look, it is hard, and I mentioned earlier, like when I first started out making money, I wanted to show everybody, quote, how successful I was. And I wanted to show them the bling and all this other stuff, because I felt like that's what you kind of had to do in order to get people's attention. And you know what? It's still to this day, that's what most people are doing,
right?
Yeah. And so, but for me, I was just having this conversation with somebody today. Like, I'm done at this stage of my life trying to convince people of anything, right? And but what I am going to do is I'm going to be authentic with myself. And really, for me, that's all that really matters. And so when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, and if I can't sleep, or if I'm sad, or if I'm unhappy, or whatever it is, I try to be truly authentic to myself and truly try to work on myself. And it's a work in progress. I've talked about this before. Like people have coaches. I have a therapist, okay, that I talk to twice a week sometimes, because I'm trying to be a better version of myself. Most people, again, now, because of COVID, and there's all these apps that are out there now, and they're helping people, and people are out there and they're talking about it maybe now more so than ever. But for me, I've always felt as though that when you talk about it, it does a couple different things. It's cathartic, like I mentioned earlier, so it's like therapy for you. But like you said, it also makes you more relatable and lets other people know that, yeah, you know what, I'm not the only one that's going through that. Because a lot of times when you have actual clinical depression, which I don't think I've ever had, I think I've probably been depressed. I've definitely had anxiety issues and panic attacks and stuff. But when you're going through that stuff, especially if you have a panic attack, people don't realize the residual effects of it. It doesn't just happen once, and it doesn't just happen for that few minutes or whatever. Sometimes it can last weeks or months after, and it's extremely painful. And so what I say to the people who are struggling with being authentic, when you finally do it, you'll realize how great you feel about it. And you also realize that you're probably helping more people. And if you just, like I talk about this in my books, like if you can't be honest with yourself, right? If you're lying to yourself, then just imagine what you're doing for other people. This whole fake it till you make it mentality is really, really dangerous for people. I'm okay with people. Dr. Finance and I are talking about this. Look, I'm in sales. I've been on TV for years. I've written books. I'm in marketing. Okay, so we all use the English language to our advantage, right? We say things that are true, that may even embellish a little bit to make the story a little bit better. I don't even know. Maybe today might have even done that. But I know this: you challenge me and ask me anything, I don't need to worry about it because I'm honest with myself.
Yeah.
So when these guys are flexing on whatever app or whatever, when I've had brawls with some of these guys that that claim that they're making all this money, and then you really press them really, really hard. Look, there are people on this app right now that are growing on this app right now, because I know we're on StreamYard and we're also on this app. There are people that are growing on Clubhouse right now, and it's interesting what's happening. But if you look at them, I was talking to Dr. Finance about this. I'm not going to say names, but if you look at them and you look at their life and you look at their social media, all of it's fake. And so for me, like, I don't know why they do it. Now, it doesn't make any sense to me, because what are you going to get out of not being real? That's the part I don't get. Like, where's the end game? At some point, it's like a giant Ponzi scheme that you're basically committing fraud against yourself, because you're not going to help.
They do get attention, no, don't they?
They get attention, but it will be short-lived. It will be short-lived. It won't last.
Yeah, because unfortunately, it's gonna take them down, because it's all gonna come out. So they'll get attention initially in the beginning, but then everybody's gonna just laugh at them, I guess, right? They're gonna not take them serious. They're gonna be like, it's a joke. So yeah. All right, listen.
I understand the pressure of it too. You know what I mean? Like I'm empathetic to those people, right? I see why in a certain way, because they're trying to, it's like the version of just keeping.
What about just being yourself though? Like, just say, here I am. I'm not a millionaire. I remember in John Lee's club once, they have John Lee, Entrepreneur Millionaire Secrets. And I was in the room and I got modded, and they have a room with, it's I forget the title is How to Make Your First Million or something, whatever it is. And, or something, a millionaire. So, and they call on me today, David, you want to add something? I start off by saying, listen, I'm just gonna be honest. I'm not a millionaire right now. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I am, because I feel an authentic saying. And I swear to God, that's how I started it, because I can't tell you. I tell you, I've made more than millions in my life, but I'm not a millionaire right now. Right. So I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I am. That's the reality. Right. And I'm not going to tell somebody how to go out there and make $1 million tomorrow, because I'm not making $1 million tomorrow. I will make $1 million tomorrow. Does that make sense? So I think makes total sense to me. Yeah. And then so many people are like, oh God, I appreciate David saying that. And because I think everybody, just because you're in the room and the title's this, all of a sudden everybody thinks they have to be a millionaire to even open their mouth. So I just said, fuck it. I'm not a millionaire. That's the reality. I'm not going to pretend I am.
It reminds me of a story, and it was at Suffolk Law, right? And so, you're from Boston, it's a good law school. They, they have a night program, right? And because growing up the way I grew up, I was still poor right after college. I was still poor in law school, and I was working. And so when I went to law school nights at Suffolk, one of the first days they introduced everybody. So usually about 150 people in your graduating class, right? And so they go around the whole room, and everyone's introducing themselves, right? And people are. Look, we're in Boston, so my classmates. I had several classmates that went to Harvard. I had several classmates that were PhDs from Harvard. We had doctors, and we had PhD MDs in my class. We had people that were already paralegals, and they already had their master's degree. And they get around, they say, well, I'm a nuclear physicist at bio. I mean, it was crazy, right? They get to me. And I said, yeah, hey, my name's Mike. I sell cars over at North Shore Lincoln Mercury. I went to Springfield College. And if anybody needs a car, come see me. It went silent for a second. The whole room started laughing. I sold 2 cars as a result of that. And my dearest of dearest friends, are now, as a result of that. Well, a buddy of mine came up to me. He went to Northeastern. Is just like me. Grew up just the same way I did. And he said, you know what, man? He's like, you and I are going to be best friends. He said, because nobody would have the balls to do what you did, because I could have maybe said some more stuff, but I sold 2 cars and I was me. And you know what? I was probably a little embarrassed because I'm around all these almost borderline elitist people. But I'm like, you know what, man, that's just who I am. And so, my ex-wife said to me once when I became a lawyer, we're from Boston. We swear all the time. She says, you're a lawyer. You need to start acting like it. And I'm like, well, okay, well, listen, when I'm in federal court, when I was practicing, I'm not dropping F-bombs in front of a 3-panel, judge, but judges, like, in an appellate argument. But maybe out in the hallway, I might be, you know what I mean? Or maybe if we're in negotiations or we're in settlements, I might be, and, like I said, I'm wearing basketball shorts right now. I got a nice shirt on to watch, but I'm wearing basketball shorts. She's like, you know what? You walk around with basketball shorts. What are you doing? I'm like, you know what? I'm just being me. I can walk around in nice stuff. I don't know. I just like being me.
Amen.
It's somewhat freeing, guys, if you're just yourself. I don't know.
Yeah. Amen, man. That's it. Just be yourself. And when you're authentic in sales, you're going to do better in sales anyway, right? That's the bottom line, because other people pick up on it. So, I'm in sales, you're in sales, just be authentic. I mean, I think there's so much phoniness, even what I teach, I help people with outbound lead generation, and everybody has like a tactic. Like, you call someone, you say this, or you start your conversation by doing this, or you say, Mike, and then just say, hey, my name is, the reason for my call is, and this is what I'm up to. And people appreciate that. Like, it's a real authentic conversation now, as opposed to you using some weird tactic to try to catch somebody's attention. And just, I don't know. Anyway, that's just me, but I think there's a lot of truth in that, because I'm really, really good at what I do. And I'm just authentic. I just tell people, hey, here's why I'm calling you, or here's what we got.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, listen, there's nothing fancy about that.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? And people listening on Clubhouse, they, I can tell one person doesn't like me. I don't know how many people in the room, but other people might not like me. But it's just like, okay, cool. Like, you listen, Grant Cardone, Rick, if you've read his books, like, he talks about that stuff too. Gary Vee talks about it as well. And these guys that are out there that are, listen, from, Grant and I are besties. I've been on his show, Power Players. That's how we first met. We first met as a result of my book, Ask More, Get More. I've texted with Grant several times. We almost did a business deal with me, him, and John Ledger as a result of Clubhouse, and and some of these other people. But like when I look at them and when I look at what they say, like Grant and even like Gary Vee, they really don't care. Like Grant says, oh well, I'm going to push as hard as I can until you unsubscribe. So if you don't like me, if you don't like what I'm saying, and and I believe Grant's being pretty authentic. I think that's what he really believes. And I think Gary Vee is also the same way. And there's a few others that are out there that I don't, again, I'm not like, like I've hung out with Ty Lopez in a very intimate setting. There was only 10 of us. I don't know him that well, but I tell you this, he's probably one of the best pitch people I've seen live. I don't know how authentic he is, but he seems to be fairly authentic and seems to not really care whether people like him or not. And I think if you can do that, more people.
Well, I think you have to get to a certain place. I think both Grant, Gary Vee, all those guys, I've had both of them on my podcast, as a matter of fact. And both of them are, Gary's super authentic. I've met Grant in person now a couple of times at his office. I'm a licensee. I also take clients for them. Like, they send me coaching clients. So yeah, I think they both are real and authentic, but I also think they're both in a place right now where they could care less what people think of them because of the success. But I bet you there might've been a time, I don't know, but I'm guessing there was probably a time where they didn't think like that. They were more concerned about not everybody hating them, right? When you're starting off, I'm guessing. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the answer, but I guess I'd have to ask them next time I have them on my podcast.
Yeah. And who knows
Actually, as a matter, speaking of, I'll have Gary on, and not Gary. I'm going to have Grant on in a couple of weeks. So I'm going to ask that question. I'm actually going to write that down right now so I remember. All right. So listen, as we're getting starting to wrap up, anybody? We have got Dave Morrell, Dave, Deborah. Dave, did you want to ask a question? Did you have a question for Mike Alden?
Hey, David, Dr. Finance here. Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just a couple things about Mike. I just want to add, like, really cool stuff. Mike actually, he wrapped a race car. Like, if you ask him that story, I think it would be great for your podcast. He spent so much money, but he learning from failure, what he was talking about, right? Like, he learned a lot about marketing through all the crazy stuff he did. He was one of the pioneers in the infomercial business. And I think that's important to highlight about Mike, because he played around with all the big stars before all this stuff was happening. I mean, talking about Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, Forbes Riley was his co-host for many years. So, I mean, this is an important part of the story. I just wanted to add real quick, and you're more than welcome to share it or not. But this is Dr. Finance. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Finance. Appreciate you saying that. And yeah, definitely. I think you already said it, so that's awesome. I just want to see if Dave Morrell or anybody else has a question for Mike.
Sure, I got one. Hey, okay, so Mike, you were talking about, how's it going?
Hi.
Good interview, by the way. Good interview. So you were talking about authenticity. This is a question we've been talking about on our show quite a bit, is legacy. I don't know if you covered this. I've kind of been in and out, but when all is said and done, what do you want to be known for? What's the Mike Alden legacy? What does that look like?
I think we're talking about it right now. I just want to be known for somebody who really is, speaks the truth and tries to help other people. Again, I think when I talk about how I grew up and the difficulty, especially early on in life, and when you're going through that stuff, and you certainly don't want to be there when you're actually literally living in it. But when I think about my legacy and and I think about that a lot, actually, with my daughter who's 16 and some other people, it's not about necessarily, putting your name on buildings or any of that stuff. And it's also one reason why I do write the books, because I do want to cement it. I do want people to know, what I've done, and hopefully it helps. I just had a guy just recently reach out to me. I didn't even realize we did this. He bought my first and second book, and he reached out, and I forgot about this. And he was in Afghanistan. He was serving in Afghanistan, and he said, Mike, I read your last book and your middle book 5% more, but I can't get 5% more for some reason. And so I sent it to him in Afghanistan. This was years ago. And he just reached out to me, and now I'm actually, consulting for him in his business as a result of that, because of, really because of who I am. Because and by the way, I didn't charge him for the book. I sent it. I don't even know what it cost to send to Afghanistan, but it probably wasn't cheap. I just sent it to him because I just wanted him to have the book, because I feel like it could help him. So my legacy truly, again, is just being who I am and truly being authentic and letting other people know that there's really nothing wrong with it. So hopefully that answers the question.
Awesome. Thanks, David. I appreciate that. All right. So Mike, in kind of wrapping up, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? If somebody wants to get your books, if they want to learn more about you, maybe do you have work with your company? What would be the best way for somebody to connect with you?
Sure.
David, I have a question. Quick.
All right, let's go.
Deborah. Yeah. What's up,
so
Deborah?
I didn't mean to get off on the wrong foot. I appreciate your room, David. I respect you. I respect this gentleman who I don't know, but I really appreciate you being honest. And you have your opinion, and I really appreciate that. And you stick to your guns, it seems like. I think if you ever met him in person, you might change your mind. And
all right,
I think
so we're gonna.
but anyway, I wanted to ask him, who is the most influential, or somebody you look up to that you've interviewed, and what's the best book you've ever read? That's it.
Thanks, Deb. Appreciate it.
Well, I would say probably the first one was The Magic of Thinking Big, David Schwartz.
I have that book. It's funny. Yeah, my mother got that for me like 20 years ago or something.
Yeah, absolutely changed my life. To answer the question, who is the most influential person that I've interviewed on my podcast, or who really had a big impact on me? I don't know that I can answer that question, because I've had people. I literally listen. And Grant Cardone, actually, he's been on my show twice, right? And he was kind of like joking with me or making fun of me at one point. Prior to Grant Cardone, it might have been the first time. My guest before Grant Cardone was my barber, who's been my barber since I was 12. And he said, "Man, I hope I do better than your barber." And he was kind of joking a little bit, but he was also taking shots. But my barber has been a barber for 40 years. He's seen a lot of people. And by the way, I want to throw a Trumpism in there. He also cut Donald Trump's pilot's hair, because the guy actually lives around here. Just so you know, a little more Trump for you. But for him, he had a lot to share, and he knew a lot. So for me, it doesn't matter that I've had some of the biggest names in business on my podcast, right? And a lot of them have been great. But then I've had people who none of you probably ever even heard of. And it goes back to what David was talking about earlier. being curious. Like, I really am curious about people. I really am curious about what they've done, regardless of their fame and acclaim and their social media status. If you have a cool story and you've done something that's inspiring, I want to hear about it. And so I hope I just don't have the answer. I've had my podcast now for almost 9 years. Before everyone had a podcast, before it was a thing. And if you're watching right now, I'm sitting in an actual, this is a sound studio. We built it for that reason only, not as a podcast, but as a sound studio. And so for me, I just like talking to people who are doing interesting things, and I can learn from them, right? One last thing. I know this is kind of a bit of a monologue, but the interesting thing about a podcast, and I'm sure you agree with this, and I know Dr. Finance does, it's for me, it's almost a selfish thing. Because when you've had the people that are in fact playing pretty big, or when you've had people and they say something to you, and you, like, meaning me as the host, learns from them, it's like getting our PhD in business, right? Just by talking to these people. So I love that podcast. I don't make money with my podcast. I never have. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot. For me, it's the connection capital that I've developed throughout the years. Almost everybody on my podcast, have their cell phone numbers. I've connected with them. I've talked to them offline. A lot of them, we've done business together. But when I have them on as a guest, I have them on specifically just to talk to them about whatever it is they want to talk about. I don't try and sell them anything. I just want to have a relationship with them.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Deb. Appreciate that. All right. So, Mike, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. Fun conversation today. Definitely went a little different than normal, which was cool. And I think it's the perfect episode too, the authenticity episode. And final question for you, man. Well, I guess anything I should have asked that I didn't ask. I mean, I feel like I was all over the place with this interview, but anything I missed, like I should have asked?
No, I don't think so. I just want to, thank you for having me on. I thank the people that asked the questions. I want to give a shout out again to Dr. Finance for connecting us, and I'll say for the people that are here on Clubhouse, I can't see how many people are on or who are listening after. Clubhouse has changed my life. And when I learn about things that have had a positive impact on my life, I do everything I can to introduce it to people that I know, because, the people that, David, that you grew up with, that I grew up with, that are still living that lifestyle that we used to live, those people, they need help too. And when I look at Clubhouse and the power of Clubhouse and the access of Clubhouse and the things you can learn on Clubhouse, even though it's changed, it's certainly changed a lot, and it's free, to me, it is one of the most powerful things that I've ever come across in marketing. And my companies have, in fact, generated hundreds of millions of dollars. And we've done some pretty innovative things. This app is free. Your podcast is free. And to be able to learn from others and to connect with others and to have access to others, I don't know, man. I think it's life-changing. And it has been wild.
I mean, if you think about it, like sometimes, like if I need something, like I needed to understand how to do Google YouTube ads. So I went and I found a couple of guys on YouTube that are like specialists at it. And I interviewed them for my podcast, and it's like, okay, I just got free coaching on doing YouTube ads, So yeah, and it was cool. They were awesome conversations, but I really think about, okay, what do I want to learn? What am I curious about? What am I interested in? What does my audience want to learn? Because that essentially, that's what's happening. In a way, you're getting coaching and you're getting training, right?
Yeah, and that's it. And it's given me and others a platform, right? Because I have spoke here and there. I'm not a professional speaker. You can probably tell just by the way I'm speaking. But it has given me an opportunity to truly let my voice be heard if I want to, and to continue to develop my story, right, in a way that I want to continue to craft that story and tell it however I want to tell it. Like you said, sometimes it goes sideways or what have you, but that's okay. Yeah. And I love it, man. And I just hope that people continue to stay on it and use it in a way that's positive for them. And I hope that I hope that the people that are listening continue to grow and add value to others as well.
Amen, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, man.